Hi, everyone, and welcome to Product Simply. My name's MJ, and today I'm going to do a product sense interview or a product design interview that's really, really common. And that is, what's your favorite product? In some ways, this question is a little bit of a trap. It could be trying to get you off your feet, trying to get you out of your comfort zone about what a product design question is going to look like. Now, typically, when you have a product design question, you're given a question like, you're going to be the product manager for, let's say, Google Maps, and you have to build a parking feature. Now, people are pretty prepared for that type of question. So this kind of format where you're given an open-ended, hey, what do you like? You might suddenly start feeling unsure of yourself, but rest assured, this is just like any other question. Now, there are some variants of this question. You could be asked instead, tell me about a product that you really don't like, or just pick a product out of the hat. In general, what I call these types of questions are choose your own adventure product design questions, where you're essentially going to pick a product and ultimately be asked to either come up with a competitor for it or to improve it. In either case, you've got a very clear indication of what the end product should look like. So in a way, it's actually a lot easier since you've got a very good sense of what it should be like. So what I want to do in this session is a mock interview against myself. And in this session, what I'd like to grade myself on is three things. Number one, was I giving a substantive answer? That is to say, did I say things that had any meaning at all? Did I answer the question? The second thing is, did I use an effective structure that could get the substance that I was trying to get across? That's really important and often a key factor for how you're going to be graded during a mock interview. Finally, well, I guess you can decide what you thought I did in terms of style. Did I present myself well? Was the audio quality good? How was the video? And generally, was I polite and forthcoming to the interviewer? Okay. So, without further ado, let's talk about this interview. Okay, MJ. What I'd like you to do right now is tell me a little bit about your favorite product. Oh, well, that's a pretty tough question. I have a bunch of products right in front of me that I really, really like, especially all of my devices. I've got my AirPods here. I've got my AirPods Max over there that I just got as a gift. But I think as a product manager, the products that I really like are ones that really demonstrate unique customer value. And one product I can think of that is especially good at that is Google Maps. Now, I use Google Maps just about every day, and I know that there are hundreds of millions, if not billions of people across the planet that rely on it to orient themselves in the world and to understand where they're going. And it's such a fundamental activity for getting to where you want to go to do the things that you really care about. And when Google Maps put together this product, I think they deeply understood how people would want to interact with the map by searching it. Obviously, something that was well within Google's purview at the time. And what they wound up doing, especially around the time that the iPhone came out, was revolutionize the way people thought about the space around them and how they could get to where they wanted to go. So I would have to say that that's probably my favorite product, especially because of its sort of long-term impact on people's lives. Okay. That's very interesting. Well, what I'd like you to do right now is see how you could improve this product. Okay. I'm going to take a quick break there and talk about what just happened. I was given this opportunity to give an open-ended opinion about things. And in this situation, you have one of two options. Number one, you can just say that you like some stuff And that's totally fine. You can use the opportunity to just choose a product and anticipate that the next thing coming is going to be an improve or replace kind of question. But really, this is an opportunity for you to explain why a product might be your favorite. Now, when we talk about behavioral interview questions, I'm gonna talk about this a lot. What values can we communicate about ourselves during an interview that can really distinguish ourselves? Well, we should always be thinking about we should always be thinking about the qualities that make a great product manager when we're giving these responses. So in this case, the interviewer is expecting some response, and I'm going to try to get them to hear that I am a very customer-focused PM. And that is why I emphasize during my response that the reason I like Google Maps isn't just because I use it and I find it useful, but rather because it had such reach and revolutionized the way wayfinding and maps are used by people. It was really revolutionary and fundamentally changed the way people work, and it made things better for them. So by talking about this piece, I was able to communicate not only why something was my favorite, but also the fact that it is the impact on people that mattered the most. So that's sort of how I like to approach this first part of the favorite question, which is to communicate a value about myself. Okay, now that we've sort of covered that, I'm going to jump into my response to how I would improve Google Maps. Okay, sure. You know, as a user, I certainly think about how I could improve Google Maps, pretty often. So let me just take a moment to gather my thoughts. I'll take about 30 to 45 seconds to do this. Okay, now that I've taken a second, I just want to ask some clarifying questions. Would it be appropriate for me to limit my geography to, let's say, the San Francisco Bay Area? I know that this is sort of an area where Google does testing with Waymo, and it seems like a good idea to have a test bed location to test any new features that I have. So with this in mind, I would like to limit it to that geography, if that's okay. Well, I guess that approach makes sense. Why don't you go ahead and assume that geography? Okay, great. Now I could ask additional clarifying questions, but for brevity, I'm going to move forward. Okay, now we've clarified some of these elements. What I'd like to do now is just talk to you about how I want to proceed through this interview. The first thing I want to do is establish what success would be for this product, for this improvement to Google Maps. And this is going to keep us really laser focused on what types of things make sense for us to do. The second thing that I want to do is talk about the customers in the space. And specifically, I want to find a particular group of people, target with a particular feature, get this improvement to really land. And then we can perhaps refine it to bring it to more people. Once we've focused on this group, we're going to think about some pain points that might be relevant for them, and then ultimately come together and find some solutions to address that problem. And then I feel confident we'll have a strong group. Okay, so I said first we wanted to our definition of success, so let's go in and do that. The first thing that we want to do is talk a little bit about why people are using Google Maps. Now, I mentioned this before, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but people use it, to orient themselves in the world and to help them get around. This is a fundamental activity and a fundamental application that people use to accomplish this. So when we think about improving this, we're really going to have to build on an already phenomenal foundation. And that means probably figuring out adjacencies or new functionality that can go beyond what's already there. The second thing that I want to talk about is Google's mission, because Google's mission is going to act as sort of a guardrail around the things that we can do. I only want to make sense for what Google does and its mission of indexing the world's information and making it useful for people. So I'm going to really focus in on how we can use new or innovative types of information to provide unique value for the people using Google Maps. Okay, finally, I want to talk a little bit about why I'm going to be focusing on engagement. Now, engagement is extremely critical. Really, it's true for every product that if it's not being used, then it was kind of a waste of time and something we shouldn't have invested in. So if I imagine I build a new feature for Google Maps and it really never gets touched, I made a mistake and I should probably have evaluated my product. But in any case, I'm going to be focused on engagement to understand whether or not I really did a good job of targeting customers and pain points and identifying solutions that make sense. All right. Now that I've established all that, I want to sort of give you a the goal for this upcoming feature is going to be. So without further ado, it's something like this. My goal for this feature for Google Maps will be to build an engaging and improved experience for the app so that people's ability to orient themselves and wayfind and navigate around becomes better by virtue of providing them new and innovative information that they can use. Okay. That wasn't very good. Okay. All right. So let's move, now that we understand what success is, let's to the next piece of the pie here, the next piece of the puzzle. And that is to say, the customers, we need to understand them, and it's in understanding them that we're going to be able to build something of value. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to be focused on identifying that will allow us to most effectively approach the goal and do something effective with it. So I'm going to take a quick pause here to think through and some other details that are relevant here. Going to take another 30 to 45 seconds here. This is purely optional. You're not required to take a pause, but it can be helpful because it shows that you're thoughtful and you're not rushing into anything. Okay. All right, so let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is sort of a bit of fundamental logic around this. Most products have a two-sided marketplace, which is to say that we have the users on one side, the consumers of the Google environment, as well as the providers of the services here. So our consumers here are consumers of navigation map information, whereas on the supply side, we have the suppliers of the map information, all of the location information. And that can be businesses, that can be municipalities. All of this information gets brought into our maps to make them useful. After all, like I'm just, a big orb with oceans on it. No, there's all of this information that needs to come from somewhere. That's a fact. So when we build features, what we have to recognize is that as we try to build a great consumer application, as we build this feature, we want to bring in all of that information and potentially new information in order to power the feature that we've got. So although we're going to be building for the consumer side, we're going to need to be very aware on the supply side as well, so we can provide those mapping services to customers. All right. Now that we understand that we're going to be focusing on the consumers, let's talk about some groups that might make sense for us to focus on. The first group, I think, would be people who are unfamiliar with locations because they're in a new place. When people are new, they're going to be confronted with a lack of information about business roads, people, and all kinds of things that they've never to. And I think given their unfamiliarity and their likely demand for mapping services, this should always be a group that we'd be considering to focus on with new features. This that I can think of are who are commuting. Now, as we know, there's a major feature in Google Maps, which is all about getting from point A to point B. That is to say, directions. And there's been others that have been introduced for this group over time: speed trap applications, rerouting for traffic, and any number of others. So I think this is because the work is probably not done. We might be able to provide additional value to this group as well. And in the interest of funnel groups, let's talk about another is people who are sort of at rest. So the at rest people, you can imagine these are people who are spending time at home, and they're using Apple Maps in order to see what to do today. Again, there are lots of features that support this cohort of people, and for that reason, I think it's a sensible group to go after. Let's talk about which of these would be most attractive. Most likely, the group that I'm least interested here in is the commuters. I think of pain points for commuters have been resolved, apart from the fact that we need to commute still as we're office. So I'm thinking that although this is a good group and they have a compelling need, it's probably not as compelling as some of the other groups. And then when I think about the rest, I think there are a lot of substitutes for a lot of sort of mapping, but also businesses, various different apps for talking about things around town, that although we could certainly integrate those into the app, we may be able to find more useful connection with another group. And that leaves us with the group with the highest need, what I believe to be the most possibility for pain, that are sort of in an unfamiliar place. And I think that makes sense because being in an unfamiliar place leaves us helpless. And although this group may be different than the other groups, it is a group may plausibly include anybody in any of the other groups, depending on circumstances. So I think this is an interesting possibility, and one I'd like to consider for this group. Does that make sense? Makes sense. Are there any other groups that you can? It's like, well, I absolutely do. I think there are only other groups. I think there are people that go on road trips who might have specialized needs. I think a lot of the other groups that I had thought of, though, are more niche and would better be suited to go into the all of the above category. The people who are not in any of the other groups that we would be landing and expanding to once we've nailed this feature with our chosen group. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Great. Then what I'd like next is take the customer group, this familiar non-locals, and figure out what's really painful for them. And this is going to be great because it's going to be the opportunity that we have for building a superior experience. So let's talk. I kind of like going through some of these pain points by kind of going through a little bit of a journey, sort of beginning, middle, of the end. See if I can trace out some pain points that make sense. The first I think of sort of for this group is, I'm getting ready somewhere unfamiliar. Going to need to do. Well, it's very possible that I'll need to find accommodations. Is it easy for me to get accommodations right from I'm not sure, but it seems possible that this is a jump that needs to be made to like kayak or something, which could be kind of frustrating and inconvenient for people. Going into sort of being there or getting there, I think one thing that likely happens is, depending on the length of the trip, you could be an unfamiliar local, just someplace from town to town, involves parking. And one of the parking issues that I frequently have myself is not havany idea what parking signs mean. And this can be really risky because if you park somewhere you're not, you can get towed, get impounded, who knows? And interpreting these things is something that perhaps Google might be able to help me with. So maybe I'd expect that to be something. And then in terms of, after the what it means to right, this could be, do I know the best way to get back? I think I probably do have a pretty good sense of that based on the nav. But assistive features, what can I do to make so and just going this sort of middle phase, and when I get to this location, what I really want to do is find suitable activities in this unfamiliar place, and I don't necessarily know where the best information is for this locale, so that's going to potentially cause me some pain. So the way I like to think about this now is I need to pick one pain point here. I really want to hone in on one because I want to hone on this one feature. So which of these pain points is going to be the one that makes the most sense for me to focus on? I think the way to determine that to identify essentially what the pain point that this chosen group would themselves focus on. And I like to think of it as like, what's the maximum pain that can have versus what's the likelihood that it would. And when I look at that, the pain point that I think is really, really tangible, and I think affects so many people who are coming into a new location, is this idea that when you just don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of psychic issues that happen there that far extension of I don't know what activities are there, or, can I find a booking? This is something that like I genuinely don't know how that's supposed to be sorted. So I'm gonna choose that one as the pain point that I'd like to solve for. Okay. So finally, let's talk about solutions, right? We've got this pain point. We've got all of the resources at our disposal with Google. In particular, we have Street View cameras. We've got, especially in San Francisco, and we've got all of the geospatial technologies that Google has and is deployed into Google Maps. So what can we do with those to value? In particular, with respect to this I don't situation. Well, if we're zooming in on street parking, where this road sign issue is such a problem, I think we can do a few things. I think we can an implementation that would allow a user to see what areas are parking. Now, we're trying to use Google's data in the most effective way. If we have Waymos driving around and they have LiDAR on them, they could live whether or not there are spots open in particular areas. And even if it wouldn't be possible to say this spot right now is open, they can at least identify which of the spots are typically open as they're driving around, and they can have predictive analytics for this. So these could literally be like, open up the app and you're coming to a driving to a close. It's a head this way for parking, sort of nudge you in the right direction, as those are the places that are sort of within a radius and likely to be open. Another option would be sort of based on computer vision. Not that that's the point, but the idea is, what if I open my camera? I'm sorry. What if I open up my phone, or it's on my dash, and when I park, an alert that says, you can't park here. And how would it know that? Well, you could have the Google Street View cameras looking at road signs and using computer vision to evaluate what those signs mean and say, so that if there's street cleaning on Thursdays at 9 a.m. and you're parked right there at 9:30, then you get an alert that says, hey, you can park there on your phone. And it doesn't tell you why or how it knew that information. It's totally opaque, but the user experience just says, hey, this is not good for you. Gotta find another spot. So I think that's and then could be, as you come a stop in a parking spot, you could get a warning that says unsafe location. So one of the things that I might not understand parking is whether or not there could be, breaking and entering, smash and grab on a particular car. And this is data that Google could very much have at its disposal. And again, in a sort of probabilistic way, you can say, hey, you might want to consider a park elsewhere. There's a parking garage, a tenth of a mile away, and it has this price. So the key elements of this solution are not saying this isn't going to work, but to give an alternative suggestion where you might park that's equally convenient. And I think that might help solve this knowledge problem about the riskiness of a particular. So we have three options here, credible in their own way. I think the issue though with the third option is that it's ultimately a multiple actions that need to be taken. Where you have to make a judgment about whether or not there's the trade-off makes sense. And in the case of the sort of probabilistic, hey, where do I park? It might just not be effective enough to justify the investment, making it, although it's very interesting, probably very risky. Whereas this idea of using the road signs, that information is always going to be static, at least for long periods of time. So we could very reliably present this in a useful way to customers, and ultimately really solve that pain point. And so as we solve this in San Francisco, we make sure that we can deploy the computer vision technology. If we can expand this to everywhere, and it could be useful for people really in most urban areas, and in some cases some suburban areas. Be some confusing signs there as well, and different ones down. In any case, having chosen this, I feel quite confident that we will have solved a genuine problem and improved Google Maps to incorporate this additional solution, this differentiated pain point. Thank you very much. And please read on to the article to sort of see my own analysis of my answer. And thank you for joining Product Simply.